Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig. If you're a musician, I made a special 3-question survey for you at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Again, musicians only. Complete this 3-question survey at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Alrighty now, let's do this. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and it's an honor and a privilege to have with us today Steve Morse. And he needs no introduction, but I'm just going to tell you, briefly, a summary of Steve in case you've been under a rock or something. Between all of his projects, just his projects alone, he's been on 70 studio and live LPs. And those projects are, of course, the Steve Morse Band, Living Loud, Kansas, Flying Colors, the Dixie Dregs, Deep Purple, and Angel Fire. He was voted Best Overall Guitarist in Guitar Player Readers Poll for 5 consecutive years, before being removed from eligibility to open the award up to other musicians, and he was inducted into their Guitar Player Hall of Fame. He's received 7 Grammy nominations, and he's guested on over 200 albums, including, which I just saw yesterday, the new Gary Moore tribute record called More Blues for Gary. More importantly, I just want to tell you a really quick story about Steve. So I interviewed, and I've heard this from a very similar story from several people I've interviewed, but this is a specific one. I interviewed Ben Lacey quite a while back. He's a really good percussion guitar player, I think out of Kentucky somewhere. And Ben had the occasion to be opening. It was either a festival or something where it was 2 or 3 bands, and Steve was the headliner in one of his projects. And I guess they ran into each other, and Ben had always loved Steve's playing, and so Ben was really happy to sit and talk with him. And something happened where they were just chatting, and Ben said something about Steve's guitar, and he goes, "Hey man, why don't you use a guitar for your set?" And he goes, Steve said, "I'd like to try your guitar for my set." And Ben said it was like it was just like a very nice act of kindness. So to me, beyond all the great playing, man, that's really what I wanted to. That's really what attracted me to have Steve on the show, because what did you say earlier? You said, let's talk about peace and love and kindness. Honestly, that's what it's about, man. The shit, all the other stuff, but that stuff is, to me, extremely meaningful. So, man, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for the wonderful intro. But let me make a disclaimer. It's nice when things work out like that, where somebody gets a positive impression. But sometimes if you're just doing your job and, warming up and focusing on getting ready for the show and all that stuff, you just don't have time to mix it up with everybody involved on a multiple act show. So, don't take it the wrong way if somebody doesn't.
Right. So if you see Steve and he ignores you.
Yeah. It may seem like, well, that guy hasn't come out of his dressing room. Well, maybe the guy is warming up.
Yeah.
And trying to get the game face on. So that's normally more like it. But if you when I take a break and go out and listen to somebody and they sound amazing, I will go out of my way to tell them, and I try to never say anything that isn't true.
But let me ask you a question, touching on what you just said. Is there at your level of, I hate to use the word fame, but you're so well known, and especially amongst guitar players, you're very sought after. Was there a point in time where you had to, and when you're well known in any capacity, people have a perception of you, they feel like, oh man, I know this guy, but they don't. Was there ever a time where you had to be Steve Morse, not the the version of Steve Morse that people thought they knew. I mean, that's got to be a difficult thing.
Well, I think after my sort of exposure to the music business in the 70s, that's 1970s, not 1870s.
We're old, not that old.
When my son was really young, he was into dinosaurs, and he asked me if there was dinosaurs when I was young. so
Nice.
that inspired me to
my God.
clarify. When I talk about the 70s, I'm talking about 1970s.
Yeah,
but anyway, back then I sort of had lots of different possibilities of what it must be like to be a professional and somebody who has, quote, made it. And one of the scenarios I imagined was somebody having to put on an act, when they go out or when they're doing anything, is basically, just like in the movies when you see somebody, a happy clown or something, and then they come off stage and then they rip off the clown mask and fire up a cigarette and start cussing and calling their bookie and stuff. There, that contrast.
Yeah.
That was one scenario where I thought, well, what if it really has to be that way? And I learned that if you're going to kind of live in the underground, which is really where I'm from and where I really do exist, then you can always be yourself. And it's better that way. And always being yourself could mean, some bad times too. Like if you're the guy that has to do all the business for your group or for your act or whatever, and somebody's stiffing you, a different side of you could come out.
Sure.
But when it comes to people and musicians and people in the audience that take the time and the money and the effort to come to a show, you always feel, a special empathy for them and with them. So, yeah, I don't really feel like there is an act, which is reflected in my lack of, commercial success. But
yeah,
I've had a good career based on staying, just head down, do my thing, and over half a century of doing that, eventually some things stick to the wall, but certainly not in the commercial arena. It's only been, in those little venues and record companies and so forth that do serve the underground market, which is, I think, too much of an ignored market these days.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, I don't feel like I have to be anything anymore, except I have to really give my best every time I go out in front of an audience, because in almost every case, they're sacrificing something to be there. They should get my best.
You're known for that, like your work ethic. You mentioned, just putting your head down. You've got a tremendous work ethic, and I always feel, to me, you can tell a lot about the rest of who a person is by their work ethic. Because people that have a good work ethic are generally good people all around. Because without, when you're not lazy, man, you're pretty together for the most part. I was curious where that came from, and like, what do you get out of the hitting it so hard, working so hard, and like, what's the biggest appeal to you of the constantly hustling and banging things out?
Well, for one thing, it helps reduce the stress. Like one of the things that I've been trying to do for actually over a decade or maybe 2 decades is every time I have, for instance, I have something in my hand, say I'm in the studio, a transformer or whatever, or an adapter, and I'm done using it. Rather than set it down somewhere where it doesn't belong, I'm going to make the effort to go to wherever it should be. And, and just one of the things, one of the only good things about growing older is you learn, through repeated events, what works and what doesn't. And that it worked better if you see an opportunity to take care of something right then and there, do it. So that takes stress off me. If I know that anytime I can, I'm going to try and tackle all the stuff that seems like it's piling up on me. And knowing that in the past, I've looked at mountains of things that there's no way I can do this. But just like how you build a house, you start with one nail.
Right.
And, put up the battering or whatever. You start. And I know that insurmountable looking obstacles will always look different if you just start. And I don't know. I think that's one way that the work ethic has really helped. And of course, having tools at your disposal. As a musician, your tools are kind of like, I don't know, like ice cubes. Ice cubes will last for a while, but they won't last forever.
Yeah. And
my chops seem to have about the same lifespan as a big block of ice.
Your chops? Okay. Oh, man.
Yeah. I could go a day, but it's going to be noticeably melted. 2 days, it's definitely smaller and less effective block of ice.
So you're constantly practicing.
Yeah. And you have to practice your mind too. And I like to practice my, writing and stuff like that. I've been fortunate to be able to work on some, with some really good people. And one of the best way to publish it, the stuff I write is through these musical libraries for TV, background music.
Are you doing a lot of licensing and sync and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. I'm not connected enough, and certainly not in that part of the world. But I have some really, really good friends that sort of give me some assignments. We need a block of this kind of music or that kind of music. And it's never synthesizer stuff. It's always guitar stuff. So
sure.
Then that suits me fine. I get to write a lot of different pieces of music, varied. And it's good to keep your mind occupied. It was my main point there.
Were you always like that?
Yeah.
Where did that come from, man?
I'm sure it's something you inherit. Yeah. Because my dad, I remember he would get up at 4:30 in the morning and be working on whatever his sermon was going to be for Sunday. And it wasn't him beginning work. It was him pretty much finalizing. And just like a writer, he would put together a thing and kind of sleep on it and then wake up early and put the final touches on it. And as a result, I thought he was really entertaining and funny. He would tell a joke, but when he told the jokes about how his middle son did something funny because, kids are so naive, I was the middle son. That's the only time he wasn't funny.
I bet. You started the Dixie Dregs after you graduated from college, I think in the mid-1970s, correct? Well, yeah, we actually had the band called Dixie Grit,
and we were like playing in 1969. And the band, we got booked on some dances and stuff, and the people hated us because we were doing our original stuff. We had vocals and really good people in the band, but it was just hard to find a venue for doing enough gigs to interest everybody. Anyway, the band broke up, and Andy West and I were sitting there going, "What do we do now?" So let's just play some gigs. Let's get a drummer and let's do some gigs, just us. He says, "You mean without vocals?" I said, "Yeah." He said, and we were called Dixie Grit before. Dixie Grit was just a funny name. It wasn't any kind of, now it's like, totally uncool in the media to be from the South. But it was, we were just kids that thought it was funny, because grits was a I don't know, sort of a funny term for, you might.
Well, it's a double meaning. It's a double meaning too, right? Like not just the food, but grit is like, metal and, survivorship and all. That's what,
If you have grit, it's a good thing. And, like the movie True Grit. Yeah. That's cool. So anyway, we were the only ones left. And so Andy said we could call ourselves Dixie Dregs because we were the dregs of the band. I said, and since we both laughed, that was it. Was, back then, as teenagers, if you both laugh at something, it's done. Yeah, man. There's no more discussion. So that was our name. That wasn't much of a business plan as we ever had. And every record company hated it. Every manager hated it. Everybody that came to work for as a tech or roadie said, "Why do you guys call yourself that? Nobody gets it." And we laugh again. Because we just can't imagine that somebody would choose a concert based on the name of a band without knowing what they're, who's going to pay money to go see a concert unless they know the music. Right. So how could it possibly matter? That's the way we thought. Right. And meanwhile, in reality, it did matter.
Yeah. What are some of like your fond memories from those early days of putting the Dixie Dregs together, getting signed, and then just like, I always liken, like when you start a business, man, I always say it's like getting a plane off the ground. You've got to it's a grind the first 6-8 months, a year, 2 years, till you can get enough momentum to get that plane up. And the band is no different. What are your fond memories of those early days of, all those things happening?
Well, one thing I remember vividly, Andy and I we decided we needed road cases if we're going to travel. We got a record label interested. So we started to build road cases. But instead of 1/4 inch plywood or 3/8 plywood, we had 1/2 inch plywood. That's all we could get at the hardware store. And we bought this fiberglass kit. So instead of, a thin sheet of Formica over some thin plywood, we had thick plywood and we fiberglassed over it like 3 coats and then painted the cases black and then put metal edging and corners on it. They looked awesome, but they were really heavy.
I was going to say, how'd you lift them?
It turns out I still have part of one of those cases that we made, and they were functional. They were just too heavy to fly, but they worked for the truck. And we were doing that in Andy's family's garage. And at one point, I don't think we had enough ventilation, and fiberglass just has solvents all over the place. So I just remember being kind of lightheaded.
Yeah, add that to the humidity in Florida, man. That's like, that's not a good recipe. Georgia. Oh, same thing, man.
Yeah, Georgia. So, I remember when we were, hoping to get that record deal, we went up to New York City and played at CBGB's
Oh yeah.
there was like 4 or 5 other bands. And, it was one of these things where, wow, we're playing at CBGB's, but there's all these other bands. And they just basically would stick them on and say, well, you guys will split the door. So a few people came in. Most everybody was on the guest list.
Oh my God.
So there, at the end of 2 nights of playing, our net was $13.
Oh my! You think that was legit, or were they ripping?
Well,
you
they
guys
had to
off?
pay the sound man off the top, and like I said, not that many people came. It was a tiny little place in Manhattan.
Yeah, it's in the East Village. I know exactly where it is.
Yes. So Andy had the $13 in his wallet, and his wallet got stolen.
Oh.
And the dog that lived there pissed on our equipment.
Oh my!
And then
welcome to New York.
my station wagon broke down as we were about to go on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, and I had to get the carburetor rebuilt. I didn't have enough money, so it took everybody's money and all mine to pay the repair shop.
Holy cow!
And that was a good representation of what you could expect if you just go to the big city. Before then, Andy and I had gone with piles of records. We made a demo record. It was, vinyl, 12-inch vinyl. And we had them shrink wrapped. And a lot of the record companies would send it back with the shrink wrap still intact, saying, well, we've listened to it and don't think it's really for us. A form letter, basically.
Yeah, without even listening to, because the shrink wrap's
of course, without listening. Or they would just send it back, say, we don't take unsolicited things. So I had, put up some of these things on the mobile home wall where I was staying. And at one point, the whole place was covered with these rejection letters. And I don't know why I put them on the wall. But I just remember, if you look at those, it looks like the end of the world. But then when we play a gig and the people in the audience are smiling and clapping and hooping and hollering, it looks like everything's going to be great. So I don't know. I sort of had to balance the business reality with the fact that we knew something special was there, that people liked what we were doing. So I guess we just believed that there would be some kind of future, regardless of the fact that every indicator that we had that was finite said no.
Man, that's great. It's funny. I have this quote I write every time I go through a new notebook. I always write it in there. And Joe Walsh, I read it one time. In the early days of the Eagles, he said, "We didn't know what we were doing. We just knew it was going to work." And that, man, is pretty much what you're saying, man. That's so cool. Did you learn any lessons from the early days of the Dregs, good, bad, or otherwise, that helped you later on in your career?
Oh yeah, lessons. Every day was a lesson. But when you're that age, and you're just starting your 20s, everything is a surprise, even though you know everything when you're 20.
Yeah, right. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, some of us were 21, 22. I was 20. We're all just got out of college and we're ready to take on the world. So, yeah, I learned a lot about, I guess just plain old reality, owning the vehicle that pulled the trailer, and then owning the trailer, and then progressively more and more of the equipment, and finally with my own band, having built a studio and a storage place, so basically doing everything running the truck, driving the truck, fixing the truck, is that for a lot of stuff, it won't happen unless you do it. If there's no big payoff, no one's probably going to do it on a regular basis unless unless you really have some amazing connections with people. So writing music and getting the stuff to the gigs, we had to do everything in house for a really long time. It seemed like, Andy would book the gigs, I would work on the music, and like I said, more and more, I would take on a role of making sure we had transportation that was as inexpensive as possible by owning the stuff and having old vehicles and old used trailers and old used tires. So learned a lot about how much braking capacity you need going down the mountains in Tennessee at 3 a.m. And when we started flying, using little airplanes to do the touring, I really, that was probably the best time of my musical career. Suddenly, everything that I liked was all in one package. Writing, playing, recording, touring, and being able to fly and have that kind of, ultimate reality. So there was no time to mess around, party, drugs, or anything, or get in trouble in any way.
Yeah.
It was busy, 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 take care of business 24 hours a day. But I was really thriving in that. I thought it was awesome.
I like what you said. It won't happen unless you do it, because man, ain't that the truth about anything, right?
Yeah. I tell people when I do the clinics, is what's it like? Or, I said, well, I thought to myself a long time ago, 50 years ago, that if I was doing a job, I would spend 8 hours doing it. And to do 8 hours of work, it takes 10 hours or 12 hours, depending on whether you commute or not. So when people go to work, they're pretty much going 10 hours. And so I said it's going to take almost all day, every day, to really move forward. And I pretty much just assume that's just what it's going to take to get any kind of foothold. And so we took it pretty seriously for a really long time about putting the time in, and for a good amount of time, it was just Andy and I. We were just like making effects and making pedal boards and trying different things and seeing if we could solder this wire to that wire. What would could we get rid of that hum somehow? And just learning and experimenting with everything. But when we finally got a gig and there was people, it was so much more worth it, having done everything.
It's pretty impressive that you had that sense of maturity at that young of an age, to be honest with you, a sense of awareness about, hey, this is going to take a lot of time. I don't think most people have that with anything. I think most people think, like, I've been working for myself 20 years. I know this because I've done enough projects now that, I know that it's like, when I start something, there's no money for 6 months because that's just the way it is,
Yeah.
People just think, oh, you just open a business or you do a project or you start a new band and, you'll have a gig next week. But I think that 20 to have that awareness, that's pretty freaking impressive.
Oh, well, I think anybody that I don't know, that just tries, that plays for free in a band, and hoping that people walk by, stop, gets a real connection with reality.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that was a great gig, a free gig.
Right.
Because you could really read the audience, and I could really tell when we're playing a piece of music, which part of it attracted them the most, or what is it? I was constantly trying to figure out what is it that makes people like music. And the one common denominator I always came up with was, if we play something that I really think is good, it seems to translate that other people really think it's good. That doesn't mean they're going to go looking for the records or whatever, but they're going to stop and stay and listen and smile. And that's the only marketing research I ever did, and the only research I ever paid any attention to. So
you learn, if I could summarize that, you learn that if it's coming from the heart, it can't be any other way.
Yes. And that I tried to say, well, is it slow tunes, fast tunes, the country tunes, or the rock tunes, or the jazz thing? What is it that people like the most? People like anything that you do really well with feeling. It sort of forged something that people later criticized me for, which is the fact that I want to have a lot of variety on every record. And they say, if you would just do one thing and be known for one thing, you do a lot better in this business. I said, yeah, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think audiences have more capacity for variety than the media can stand. Media wants to sell this brand in a slot in the record store, when there was record stores.
Yeah.
And they want to program radios for this only. And this, if you go to a concert, all the bands tend to have similar vibes and stuff. I think people appreciate variety, and I think they have a huge capacity to absorb it. That doesn't mean that the top selling thing in the world is going to be an album with lots of variety, but it means there's got to be more people like me who just get bored with one kind of repetitive thing over and over.
Well, I meant you could be you, and other people are going to like it, and there'll be people that want to listen.
Yeah.
Which is more important than anything, as a musician.
But that's how I got to the point of saying, well, I'm going to write music for every style that seems fun to me, because for one, I like it, and for two, I think having variety is good for the audience. And if I like it, and we do it our best, I think that people will like it.
Yeah. Very cool. How'd you get the Kansas gig, and what were the biggest adjustments you had to make for that gig? And I guess part 3 of that was, what are your biggest takeaways from that experience? So how'd you get it? Biggest adjustments, biggest takeaways?
Well, first of all, the gig happened. I was at a Robert Plant concert in Atlanta. We lived near Atlanta, and at that time, Kansas had moved from Topeka to Atlanta to be in a more central location, better for touring and international flights and transatlantic flights and stuff. Well, I was sitting next to Phil Ehart, and during when one of the band was changing over or something, and there was a moment I could hear him. Said, "Yeah, did you hear we're putting the band back together with Walsh?" And guys talk to each other, and they the third person that's not there, they would say by his last name, but he meant Steve Walsh, the original singer. so I said, "All right, that's fantastic." I was, always a big fan of Kansas. So I said, "That's really great, man. I can't wait to hear you guys." And then Phil said, "Well, yeah, Kerry he's not really that into it. He's not going to be doing it." So, oh, bummer. Oh, well. Anyway, you need any song ideas, you want to kick something around, let me know. But I really hope it goes well. I said, actually, we are getting together. And if you want, come by and see what happens. Okay. And we just had a really organic, nice meshing vibe. And we wrote a song. I thought it was pretty cool. We'd worked with Steve Walsh before. I talked him into singing background on one of the tunes that the Dregs did as a vocal experiment called "Crank It Up," and it had this really difficult bridge to sing, a real high part. And Steve I did a whole bunch of tracks with him and basically burned out his voice because I didn't know anything about vocals. I thought it was just like an instrument.
Yeah.
You can do as many takes as there are hours
Sure.
in the day. Anyway, so I burned his voice out pretty much for that. He was probably hoarse for the next 3 days. But anyway, we'd worked together, and I thought that was pretty cool. And what he did sounded really good. He wasn't listed in the credits, interestingly enough, because his record company would have found some kind of legal problem with that.
Isn't that weird that
crazy.
These companies always have a problem with other people? There's always like things are getting away from other people making money, but them.
Yeah.
I wonder how those laws are written so unilaterally in favor.
Well, if Dixie Dregs had been bigger than Kansas, they would have loved it.
Yeah, suddenly, magically.
Yeah, it was the fact that we weren't selling as many records as Kansas. That was the reason it was not cool for him to be singing on. It's just stupid. There's always stupid stuff. Anyway, so I had a pretty good experience working with Steve, and Phil was we'd hung out with the guys in Kansas before, and we'd opened for them one time in Salt Lake City, and everybody got along. We used to go in the studio and hang at there, and Jeff Glicksman was also a friend, their producer. So yeah, we wrote a song. Then I came back. We wrote another song. Another time we did another one. It was going really well. And pretty soon we had enough for an album. Phil says, "You want to record this with us?" Well, yeah.
Twist my arm.
So we had the whole album pretty much done, arranged, and then the record company got more involved, and they wanted a producer. So that's when things started to change a little bit. This was the Power album. And it was very organic and very much the band dealing with the band. And then after that, the second album was more of we need to have an MTV ballad hit or something on the charts, and a different push. And I was coming from, I want to hear those instrumental things that, that Kerry was so great at writing. Let's do more of that. And there was more pushes, management, record company, and it was just a bad time to, the height of the MTV craze was bad time to be wanting to put, that underground instrumental spin to the van. So anyway, it lasted for just about 5 years for me. And I think one of your questions was, what was my takeaway
Yeah.
from it? What was, well, one thing was working with a vocalist, writing, and being, going to LA and being introduced to other writers that were professional writers, and working with them on songs, and just seeing how much of a craft there is, even in that pop world, or stuff that was trying to be really radio friendly stuff. And I knew I didn't fit in that well, but I like to take on any challenge that's musical. So I learned a lot from that, and especially our second album, we work with Bob Ezrin, who is now fully involved with Deep Purple, and I'd never heard of the guys Bob Ezrin had worked with before, like Pink Floyd and Kiss. Nobody's ever heard of them. So
yeah.
Some tiny little albums like Dark Side of Something.
He did The Wall.
Yeah, Hitting the Wall. I don't know who's ever heard of it.
Yeah, right.
But I was very impressed with his really direct approach, and how much he understood about the mechanics of recording. So I learned a lot from him. And also, I think my other big mentor was Ken Scott. We did the 2 Dixie Dregs albums with him, and he was just incredible to be with. He was just super kind, super knowledgeable, patient, and let me have a hand in things, and basically taught me how to produce. Anyway, fast forward up to Kansas. So one of my takeaways was that there's a lot more to being in a vocal band than I thought. And, that there is so much that you can do when you try to force feed something, or try to force something. And it's always best if things happen, the chemistry of things sort of happens organically.
Yeah.
In other words, our first album did. There was no push, no nothing. It was just, here's what we like. And the second album was lots of pushing in different directions. And even though I learned a lot and everything, I guess I came away with, okay, that was really cool. We made some great music, and we had some great tours, actually. But I sort of miss what I left behind, which is writing my own stuff. Having more control, and especially that instrumental stuff. So went back and did some more albums on my own, and that went well. I think the swell bunch of guys, and really straightforward. They got a beef with you, they'll tell you. And if you do everything right, it's just like being on a team or something. They're the most like, I guess, like a baseball team of any band. They're close knit and hardworking, honest, just straight up bunch of guys. It was a good experience. And like I said, I certainly learned a lot about writing.
how'd you get the Purple gig? And same question, were there adjustments that you had to make?
With the Purple gig, it was because I think Roger had seen my band play.
Steve Morse band?
After Kansas. And we played in Orlando near where they were staying.
Okay.
And they were recording Slaves and Masters or something like that in Orlando. So I suddenly got a call from my manager saying that they finished this tour with Joe Satriani and they were now looking for a permanent member. And this was the first call that they had made. And I said something like, having gone through this MTV scenario and everything, I said, is there going to be any kind of image thing involved or dress code? He said, no, you just be yourself. I said, do they actually know who I am? He said, yeah. Okay. I said, well, in that case, I'd like to see if they can still play. I'm sure they'd like to see if I can play. Mm. So we agreed to do 4 shows. And I met Roger for a photo at a Dregs gig when we were doing a little Dregs reunion. So we took a photo of the 2 of us, and then the other 3 guys in England took a photo, and they merged them into a publicity photo for our 4-day tour.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so I met the majority of the band that 24 hours before the first show.
Was that weird?
And I had a study tape. Yeah. I had a tape of Joe Satriani's concert with them, and I had a tape of Richie Blackmore's concert with him. So I sort of did an amalgamation of the 2 and, took some of the approaches that Joe did and some of the approaches that Richie did and mixed it together. And there was a good bit of improv in this little live set. So I kind of had to guess it. I would say to myself, I guess this is improvised. I'm not sure, but we'll see. So when we got together, we're in the dressing room of the gig that was sold out. It's going to be happening tomorrow. But so we're in the dressing room. I'm meeting everybody, and we're shaking hands. I'm tuning up. I play something, and all of a sudden, I hear behind me, John Lord plays the exact same thing back. So what? His ears can't be that good. I play something else a little bit more complicated. He plays it back and then adds something. I said, wow, this is like playing with a jazz player.
Yeah.
And there was a stereotype of, the rock players, they hate, having technique, and they hate practicing, and they hate, well, this guy was just nailing it. And he had the ears that, and by the way, Don Airey does too.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that both of these guys could hear pitches and improvise like a jazz player. I was so impressed. Then Pacey starts playing the beat, and he's got some swing in it. I said, this is awesome. This is awesome. He's playing a rock beat, but he's swinging it. I said, this is, wow. It's like sitting in a big easy chair, just relaxing. And Roger, of course, just rock solid, nailing it. And then Ian Gillan, instead of singing something, he just comes over and smiling and just kind of shaking his head in time. Like he's actually into the fact that we're jamming, as opposed to, saying, oh, come on, quit messing around. Let's get to business. He was loving the fact that we were having a good time. So it was nothing but positive. In fact, after that jam, it was a long jam, Roger came up and slapped me on the back, said, I reckon you're in. And we hadn't even played a gig yet.
That's so wild, man.
We hadn't even played.
This was just like a rehearsal.
Yeah, the first rehearsal.
I reckon you're in.
It was just great chemistry.
That's awesome, man. That is so
Yeah,
cool.
I thought it was awesome too. And I was, don't ever tell them I said this, but I was so surprised that they were that good.
That's no, I mean, if like you just said, rock guys have this stereotype of, that's not their thing. So, I mean, I don't think that
Yeah.
they would take it any other way of, how would you know? You never played
Yeah.
with him before.
Well, actually, they never toured the States enough for me to have ever seen them play live. So, yeah, it was a big question mark.
That's wild.
Plus, when you see somebody that's amazing, even and their show's amazing, you still don't know how much of that is just raw natural talent, or how much of it is somebody, doing a great, strict arrangement or whatever. You just don't know. I was really pleased to find out that they improvise. They like to improvise, and they could hear so well. John blew me away.
That's so cool, man. I
Yeah.
gotta ask you, if you can remember, what did it feel like the very first time you're on stage with them and you're standing in front of what I would imagine had to be more stacks of amplifiers than you'd ever stood in front of, and you got like 100,000 people, like just the sheer energy, like what the hell? Do you remember what that, like the first time, what did that feel like, man? Like standing in front of a jet or something?
Yeah, well, it was my own amps. So, and I was using Richie's cabinets, speaker cabinets. And yeah, it was a pretty big stack of stuff, but I'd already decided to divide it up into two, one for wet and one for dry. So that cut it in half. I only used the wet, maybe 20% of the volume of the dry. Even then it's only on for part of the time. So I had to cut down quite a bit.
Okay.
And part of it is because I want to hear everybody else. I don't like where it's all I can hear is me. I mean, that it's impossible to play that way. So basically I turned the cabinets on their side, the angled ones. So instead of angling straight ahead and up, like angled cabinets are meant to be, I turned them on the side so they angle a little bit left and a little bit right.
Okay.
And that spreads the sound out more in all different directions. The idea is to get rid of the big hot spot, where there's no guitar. Now suddenly you can't stand it and you just want to die, and then move to a little bit over and then it's no guitar. So even though I was playing with lots of cabinets, I immediately went to my survival mode of I've got to tone this down and make it to where, I can have a wider area of hearing myself, but still hear the other guys.
Yeah. So it wasn't like I interviewed Jack Pearson, he played with the Allman Brothers for like 3 years, and a great player. Do you know Jack?
No.
He
I met him.
Really interesting guy, but he said that one of the reasons he had to leave the band was because he had a hearing issue, and Dickie had sometimes 300-watt amps literally dimed, and it was every night. And he goes, I'm not going to tell Dickie Betts to turn it down, like I can't do that. So unfortunately he had to kind of leave the band, but yeah, it sounds like you're not as you're a little more judicious with the volume. Well,
I learned with Kansas because we had side fills for the first time. With Dregs, we never used side fills. Everybody had like a monitor wedge if they needed it, but we originally designed the band with no monitors. Everybody played through a cabinet on their side and a cabinet on the opposite side, so that we didn't need any monitors. We could just set up and play. So when we went with Kansas concerts, the side fills were really big, and that's what Steve Walsh also used to monitor himself. So I was used to that there's going to be this huge sound on stage. So I'd already gone to earplugs.
Okay.
Not big earplugs, but just a foam earplug cut in half, half the depth. So I cut one earplug in half and put one in each ear. And that gives a few dB reduction. And you put in your ears 20 minutes before the show. and your brain has time to
yeah.
adapt to the different, the sounds of people talking, the sounds of, playing the electric guitar by itself. You adjust to the new relationship of frequencies, so that you can still judge tone.
That's great. That's clever, man. You've played with literally hundreds of great players over your career. I was curious, would it be possible for you to pick like top 3 experiences you've had musically for whatever reason, maybe the work you did that particular evening or the personalities involved, the hang, or that just they had special magic that night?
The top 3 performances,
musical experiences you've had.
Okay.
Yeah. Musical experiences that you had. Could have been studio, could have been performances, whatever,
Oh man.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to put it into order of just, I can name 3, but
just go with what you got. Yeah, you don't have to put them in order.
Okay, well, I think when we were in the studio doing our first album, I was able to talk them into letting me try and do this little instrumental piece where I was doing the melody and I wanted a backward sound. And the only way to do it was to record it, learn the melody backwards, and flip the tape over and put it on, a different track than, like if you wanted on track 24, you record on track 1 with it flipped over. Stuart Levine was the producer, and he had done like the Jazz Crusaders and, real straight ahead feel stuff. And so, I was pushing it a little bit by doing this, but he said, all right, whatever. And we spent a little time, placing where the beat should be for it to sound good. And this was before digital stuff. You had to nail it. You had to lay it in the tape. And it was just a vision that I had, and to have it work out and sound cool. That was probably one of the best recording experiences I'd ever had.
And what track was that?
It was called Sleep from our first album. And writing the melody backwards was not such a big exercise, and learning it backwards was not so hard. But it took a little bit of. I think it took 2 or 3 tries to figure out which part of the beat to put it in, and there was no click track, so I had to manufacture a click track that could sound like a click track backwards.
Holy crap!
And then that turned out to not work time-wise, so I did another click track, but delayed a little bit. And then I said, wait, we can use a digital delay. Let's delay the click track, which will put it ahead, which will put it in the right place, because when you play it backwards, there's a delay as the note ramps up. So anyway, it was this complicated thing. And similarly with Wages of Weirdness, I wanted to do a solo in 3 parts, but basically improvise a solo and then harmonize it with 2 other parts. and that was just a huge pain in the butt for them. They were kind of like hitting their forehead against their palm of their hand in the studio and just, come on, Morse. But they let me do it. And that was cool. Being able to, try some of the things that I only imagined that I could do in the studio, and being able to, realize that was that was really cool.
And just
And as far as, I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, what you just said, being able to do things that you imagine. Yeah, that's a really cool thing, man. Whatever it is, that's on point, man.
Yeah. And the difference between doing that at home would be, if I tried it at home and it didn't work, I would still keep trying it. But I knew that I had a limited number of chances to do experimental stuff, because the studio time was ridiculously expensive and we had a low budget because we were a new band. So it was basically, I just really had to sell this idea and I really had to make it work in a few tries. Both of those things.
That's great.
So that was cool. And performing, man, I'd have to say that there was almost I can only think of 3 nights that sucked for me. And they were the 3 nights right before the band broke up.
Wow.
The Dregs. There were 3 in a row. But every other show there was always something amazing. But I'd have to say the most incredible experience was my senior recital, because the first half of it was me playing solo classical pieces that I had written and learned on the classical guitar for my performance degree, part of my degree. And the second half was ensemble. And it turned out to be the Dregs.
This is at University of Miami.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And so it was stuff that I'd written for my ensemble, which was called Rock Ensemble No. 2. And the amount of pressure, especially doing the solo classical stuff, was so enormous that I ended up forgetting part of one of the complicated pieces that I'd written. But I did enough playing and improvising in my life to where I was able to, continue playing without stopping and just bring it around to the next section. And then that became a big life lesson for me, was always practice things with more than one aspect. For instance, if you play through a piece and you make a mistake, don't start from the top again. Do that mistake perfectly 10 times. Like make it right 10 times in a row before you do it. And then after that, I learned to just concentrate on the weak links rather than always go from the beginning. And then another concept that it really helped me with was learn the music by fingers, by ear memory, and by sections, to where you can start at any section without having to hear the part before. And doing all those things will help you learn a piece a lot better than just starting from the beginning and doing it endlessly, repetitively.
Yeah, that's pretty smart.
So, all right, so I got recording and the most amazing gig, most intense gig, I would say. And what was the third category you said?
Well, no, it was just top 3 musical experiences you've had.
Okay, top 3 in anything. One time I did. We were actually doing a video that we knew nobody would play, but
that's so funny.
We're
doing a video.
I had an airplane.
We knew nobody would play it.
Yeah. It would just be a total thing, but the guitar solo of this piece, I wanted to play on a guitar while I was flying this ultralight.
You wanted to play while you were flying?
Yeah.
Attention, passengers.
I found we were doing the video in Chicago, And I found this guy that had the exact same ultralight airplane as I did. And I knew that I could fly it with my feet. I didn't need my hands once I was up at altitude. So I strapped on the guitar. We got a camera guys in a Piper Cub. And I went up, and it was windy. A little too windy to be doing this. But I was like, no, we're not going to cancel this. So I went up and did it. And it went pretty well. Something happened with the camera, and they screwed up the footage, so it didn't get used. But anyway, that was probably one of the most fun guitar solos I'd ever done, and no one heard it or saw it.
Because you're doing everything, because you're doing the things that you love all at once.
Yeah, and just the fact that I just didn't know if it'd be possible. I knew in my mind it was going to work out, but with that wind and everything, I just didn't know if I could pull it off and stay in formation with the Piper Cub and all this stuff, and do it no-handed.
Wow. So
and I was playing, with along with it in my mind.
Wouldn't it have been, I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking right here, but couldn't you have just like done it in the plane and then put, a fake, like, how they do in movies, like there's, looks like the plane's flying.
Yeah. I think
that would have been too simple, man.
The guys in the Godzilla costumes.
Yeah.
With the tiny little city.
Yeah. Something like, wow.
No, we did the real thing. I wanted to do the real thing.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Holy crap. Were you married at the time? Like, what did your wife think of, like, honey, just so you know, by the way, I'm going to do a solo and fly the plane in the wind with my feet. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think every young guy has to do adventure stuff.
Yeah. No, for sure. You moved around a bit as a kid, at least if what I read, a little, like I think Ohio, Tennessee, Michigan. I was curious, why was that? And was there a particular place that you felt like, I grew up in this place?
Well, I would say as a kid, I learned to play music and guitar and be in a band in Michigan. So that was sort of like the beginning. And then right when I was reaching my teenage years, we moved to Georgia. And that had to do with my dad's job, him getting a better job. And earlier than that, it was being a minister, you got to go to where you're needed. Right. And he was all about that. But at the same time, he was also going to graduate school and getting his PhD in psychology.
Wow.
Educational psychology. So when he finally did that and was able to, he moved to this Augusta, Georgia, where there was a medical college that he was going to be employed with, and his job was to try to help them teach people better, and keep track of how they're doing. So yeah, I was exposed to a lot of different things just with my family.
Sure.
A lot of different. And my mother also became an educational psychologist too. The whole point was they had 3 kids. They back then it was like, there's no way these kids aren't going to college. And they just imagined all 3 of them, going to higher education than a bachelor's degree. So I was the black sheep. I sort of quit after I got my bachelor's and, went to play CBGBs for $13. We never got the $13.
More importantly, do you realize how lucky, like, both your parents are psychologists? Like the normal potential is you'd be totally screwed up. With both parents who were in.
They were really cool. Their whole point was, you got to make your own mistakes and you've got to learn no matter what. If you want to do this, it doesn't feel right to us. That's not what we would recommend, but we love you. We support you. Go for it.
Man, that is a breath of fresh air. And it's just like people are my kids are just older now. My oldest is 28. We got one left at home, 18. So we're like on the 5-yard line here. But, man, I've seen so many parents just now, like they don't let, failure is good. You learn a lot from failing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And failure by your own decisions is you learn even more from.
Absolutely, man. And then you have the opportunity to have such a great experience when you fix it. You say, "Oh, let me do it different next." You know what I mean? You have that, you know, that sort of pride of ownership that you made something work on your own. And I think gives you all the confidence you need to survive in the world, because there's a lot more failures than successes in your life, as you know, man.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the things I do love to do, like my family, which the majority of them are in teaching, is these guitar clinics and talking to younger players or people that just want to learn and about the psychology of how do you be a great player. And one of the things I say is, if you got a job right now at a burger place and they say sweep the floor, if you learn to go all the way to the edge of the floor and get every single piece of dirt and can do that with nobody looking over your shoulder, you've got what it takes to be a great player. And I can spot somebody that doesn't even know how to play and tell you whether they can be a great player or not, because of their attitude. Most of the time you spend as a player is going to be by yourself practicing. And who's watching over you? You are. You're the one that's going to say, I just missed that. I need to slow down and get that better. Or you're going to be the one that says, I missed that. I'm tired. I'm sick of this. I'm going to go watch TV. So your attitude about the most simple task is going to reflect into how you play and how you learn, or what is okay. You know, what standard is it going to be? If your job is to put the burger in the middle of the bun, put it smack dab in the middle of the bun and get it right. Make that your practice and your standard with everything. Driving. Is there a middle of the lane? Yes. Find it. Be there. Don't be on the side. Don't be on the left side. Don't be on the right side. Is there a turn signal? Yes. Use it. Do everything the best you can, and you will have the attitude that when you're sitting there by yourself at 3 a.m. with an idea, you're going to say, yeah, that's all I really need. I just throw a bridge on that and it's done. Or you might say, wait a minute. Just like that time I swept the floor and went all the way to the edge and found some dirt that I missed, I bet there's something more I could do with this. I bet there's something I haven't thought of yet that's going to make this even more incredible. That's what the difference is. If you,
I totally
between
agree with that, man.
between finding the obvious things that you can get away with and get by with, and looking for every shred of advantage that you can get, every shred of creative signature you can put on.
It's how you do one thing is how you do everything, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know?
I could have said that a lot shorter.
No, it's all good. I only know that because I read that in a book once, or a buddy of mine maybe told me he heard that a speaker say it, and we always talk about it with ourselves. But yeah, it's true. And you notice that because, you either have a certain way of approaching things, and then the other thing that made me think of when you were saying is integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking.
Yeah.
But
that's how it is when you're practicing.
Yeah.
When you're practicing, no one's watching you.
But
it's not a performance.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I apologize.
My brother told me that thing a long time ago. He said, how you do one thing is how you do another.
Yeah. Do any of your brothers play music?
Excuse me?
Do any of your brothers play music?
Oh yeah, both of them. They play guitar, and
I know the one drums.
Just really, really smart guys and really good. But didn't seem as fascinated with the idea of traveling around looking for beer
$13
halls to play in. Yeah,
man.
And Dave plays harpsichord and drums. Dave was our drummer in Dixie Dregs, my older brother, but he plays guitar and keyboard too. Mark plays guitar pretty much, and he's a scientist, a toxicologist. My younger brother.
So everybody in the family is really bright.
Yeah, my dad was not a musician though.
Yeah,
he was not. I don't remember him playing anything, but my mom could. She could sight read pretty much anything and play it.
What instrument? Oh wow!
Yeah. So that was the first musical instrument I got, was sitting down at the organ, the electric organ that she used to play, and I picked out a tune by ear as a little kid, and she thought that was fascinating. I thought it was a lot of work, but it was fun to hear it. I heard it in my head, and so it was just like banging, just aimlessly hitting notes until I heard it come back. Yeah.
If you had to go back and give your younger self, young Steve Morse, advice, what advice would you have given yourself that would have made your life easier? It could be musically, business, personally.
Oh, wow. I would say there's never a good time to criticize anybody. There's never a good result. And that every opportunity you can take to praise somebody for something that they really did, not mindless, meaningless praise, but substantial praise for substantial effort should be taken, every effort. And I think because that's, of course, there's a bunch of things I could have done differently to, have a bigger, brighter career in terms of money. But I would say that's the most important thing. It's that, just as a human being, I was a little bit of a slave driver as the musical writer of the Dregs, and just as an impatient teenager and 20-year-old, I would have liked to have been more patient and given everyone more encouragement rather than say, no, you're rushing. No, slow down. No, now you're dragging. No, that's sharp. No, that's flat. No, and all that. And that was my job. But, I think the people that are most artful in any kind of leadership job are the ones who motivate the people to do their best, with positive energy.
Man, thank you for sharing that. For whatever it's worth, man, I don't know you well at all, but the one thing that's been real nice about talking with you is there's a ton of positive energy coming off us. So I think you got that fixed.
Oh, cool.
Let's talk about gear for a few minutes. Your signature Ernie ball, is that like your go-to for all your projects right now, or is there something else you use? Or I guess I'm trying to figure out what are your top 3 guitars that you enjoy playing?
Actually, well, I have 3 models that ironically are my top 3.
Awesome.
The number 1 is the 4 pickup model with light wood. And number 2 it's called a Y2D, also made by Music Man. And it's a heavier because it has a plated top, beautiful maple. And, to me, it looks perfect. But it's a flat guitar. There's no cutaways. I mean, there's cutaways, but there's no sort of slanting off where your forearm meets your right hand, your right arm meets the guitar. Mm-hmm. And a little bit heavier, but still balanced very well. And that I use that with the purple gig all the time. It's only got 3 pickups, but it's got 5-position switch with multi-poles so that you can put the pickups in any arrangement electrically that you want. It doesn't have to be the 2 pickups that are right next to each other. So I have the 5 combinations that I used all night long with purple on that guitar. And then recently they made another really lively 2 pickup guitar with an active boost circuit, and that's just for doing screaming stuff and a lot of harmonics and things like that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, whenever I see it's never, if I had a different guitar, this would all be okay. To me, it's always, I don't know, there's this part, maybe I need to change to this. Maybe let's try a different key. Let's try a different tempo. Let's try reducing the density of notes here. Let's try having more counterpoint. Let's try less counterpoint. It's always those kind of things are all I'm thinking about. It's if something slaps you in the face, like, all right, the sound is too thin or too annoying in some way. Okay, yeah, then I start thinking about equipment. But I just go and mess with that, change the mic or whatever, or move the mic or change the EQ or something until it's back in the manageable zone. Then it's all about painting again. It's like sound only setting the equipment and sound is only a big deal to me when it's not working. When it is working, then I need to just be doing more with it. For instance, rather than work on the sound of one thing, I might say, well, I got a good usable tone here. Let me put down this part. And then in this part of this phrase, I'm going to use harmonics an octave or 2 octaves above to make a chimey little effect with another track. And that's how I do the sound. I'm sort of more orchestrating different approaches of playing the parts rather than how I'm going to EQ it with the equipment.
Gotcha. What about amps? Is same thing as number 1 your Steve Morse signature angle?
Yeah, and that's because they gave me pretty much choose what you like with all these amps that we have and what you'd like to change. And so I got the best clean channel, which is I can turn down the volume enough to play my classical through it. In fact, on the Dregs tour, I did exactly that. I used an amp through a 412 cabinet to play my electric classical guitar through, and it works great.
That's great.
Because it's so friggin' clean. But if you turn that up, it starts to break up really nice and usable. And then my second channel is bread and butter distortion. Put everything on 6, and if it doesn't sound incredible, your guitar cord isn't plugged in. Something like that. And my third channel, I have 4 mid-range controls, so I can dial in, a solo sound that will sort of push through the noise with it without having to move a lot of dB and use a lot of power. And it, may not be the perfect rhythm tone, but just for certain lines and solos, it allows me to cut through and help the sound man where he doesn't have to worry about me getting too loud, but it gives me a different tone that cuts through the clutter. And yeah, I have it sitting in the studio. That's what I go through.
That's what you go through.
And it's, like I said, it's so versatile that I just don't need anything else.
And it's a 100-watt head, right?
Yeah, and it could be a 10-watt head or 20-watt head for what I use it for. But there's enough power to push 6 4x4 cabinets.
Wow.
I know for a fact.
Holy smokes. Man, what's your
more than enough?
What's your favorite song that you wrote and why?
We just one of my favorites is Day 444. That was, I was kind of pretty much already written it when the title came about, but the hostages had just been released and they had 444 days in captivity. Iran had kept them. And so that really was striking to me. So we called it that, and it was a real emotive piece. And I just really liked it because, variety of sounds and layering, and the time signature is kind of all over the place. The time signature is just dependent on the melody. It's not like we're going to play in this time or we're going to play in that time. It very freely changes, and that's what I liked about it. Is that there was no rules, no formula, no nothing.
What's your favorite song to play? Doesn't have to be something that you wrote.
Wow, that's pretty intense. I don't know if it I would say it depends on what kind of night I'm having. A tune that has a lot of improv in it, when you nail it, it's really awesome. But I think Hereafter was one of my favorites to play. It had a little bit of everything. The challenge was to make all the parts, make the harmonic section was very difficult. It had to be perfect. And the solo was, well, it was, and it's very similar to Day 444. Has lots of different moods in it and different parts. Challenge to play, but really rewarding and fun to play. And Hereafter we did for a long time. It was Rod's wife's favorite tune.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And Rod's wife died of cancer some years back.
Oh man, I didn't know that. Oh,
but she's always loved that part of the set. And she used to travel with us and was like, a guidance counselor for me of like Rod was too, sort of like the conscience of the band, kind of, pointing out how things we do might affect other people or be read by other people, and, teaching us to be more aware of little things. And, like Rod was the guy who's always, when we were staying at a hotel, was make sure you leave a tip for the maids. And I was like, and still to this day, I think of Rod every time I'm checking out. It's like, if I have the right kind of money for a tip, I'll do that. Otherwise, I will clean the room, because all I can think of is somebody's mother,
right,
is going to have to, lean over and stoop down to pick up this piece of paper that, because I missed the trash can when I threw it from across the room, I said, I don't think so. I'm going to go, first of all, if I do that, I'm going to pick it up right then and there. But I do go around the room and cleaned up, basically just thinking, just like Rod and Michelle would have done, always think of the other person, And Rod says, like he said today, this year when we did a tour, says, yeah, put $5 down. It's not going to change your life, but it might change somebody's day, that's cleaning the room. To know that somebody's thinking about them.
Yeah. Man, I learned that I used to drive a cab at night, like midnight to 6. And we were out at a restaurant this weekend, and I always tip pretty well for that reason. And my wife goes, God, and my sister-in-law was there. And she said, well, you left a good tip. I said, well, the extra few bucks out of my pocket is nothing compared to the extra value. The value they're getting, the extra far outweighs any slight inconvenience. Which is, I agree with that.
Yeah, as Americans, a lot of, there's a lot of jobs where people depend on tips as their part of their wage, really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Man, this is a tough question. Who's your favorite guitar player? And there's probably a list of a few, but who's a knee jerk that comes to mind?
I guess there's a lot of them. But I think the one that sort of crossed the bridge for me was John Mclaughlin, because he went from a jazz background to probably at first rock, then jazz, and then finally sort of crossed into the fusion thing with Mahavishnu, and just such a innovator. And it's no secret, anybody that's heard Mahavishnu Orchestra and the Dregs, that I was heavily influenced by him. Mm. Later got to know him and play on a tour, or several tours, with Al Di Meola and John and Paco de Lucia. And at the end, I even got to jam with all three of them. So that was like one of the biggest learning experiences. But also, I had a great time getting to know Steve Howe for the same reason, very formative, because he played classical guitar and electric guitar. And I like the players that have that durable kind of attitude mixed with the ability to do more than one thing. And and as a rock player, all the typical guitar gods, Clapton, Beck, Page, Hendrix, you can go on and on.
Sure. How about Desert? Sorry.
No, I'm just
Desert Island Discs. Knee jerk reaction. Top 3 that come to mind.
Watermark by Enya, and the Tallis Scholars. Pretty much anything they did. It's sort of all the stuff I've heard of them is a cappella stuff, and it doesn't sound like block harmony or contrived in any way. It's them recreating pieces where their counterpoint is continuous and mysterious, almost what keys and chords are happening. And this is music I would listen to only at certain times. And for the third one, well-tempered synthesizer, Walter Carlos, before Walter Carlos became Wendy Carlos. And I can't find that on YouTube or anything. You can find millions of copies of people trying to pretend to play it, or they're not pretending, but they're playing it with their own synthesizers. And the well-tempered synthesizer was I think the album that came right after Switched On Bach. Walter Carlos picked the most incredible examples of the best writers in the history of mankind and performed them with one note at a time through an analog synthesizer recorded on a multi-track tape. It just blows my mind how great that is. The stuff came alive to me as a teenager in such a way that, we would listen to Hendrix, Cream, well-tempered synthesizer, all in a row, just like that. And the writing, I'm telling you, it's cherry-picked some of the best little short pieces of classical music in history with the most attractive sound done by an absolute master. So, yeah.
It's 3 albums that have never come up, and I've interviewed close to 400 people, man. That's really cool. Several questions came in about your hand issues, and so I'll put them into a couple of questions if you're even comfortable discussing it, and if not, that's totally cool, man. So specifically, what is the nature of your hand issue to the extent you're comfortable answering? What adjustments have you had to make regarding playing? And then there's a couple of guys that have hand issues themselves, and they were curious what the best pain relief strategy you found as it relates to playing.
Well, it's just, first of all, it's just osteoarthritis heavily aggravated in my right wrist, partly caused by the fact I've been playing 10,000 notes a day for 53 years, and also aggravated by the fact that I twist my wrist in 2 axes in order to anchor the right side of my right hand on the strings. And then I arch with my little finger and make a little opening for where I pick the guitar, and am able to mute the other strings that I'm not playing. That gives me incredible control and the ability to skip strings very easily. Anyway, it's gotten to the point where the bones are hitting the bones, and it hurts a lot. It just makes it aggravating. So now I practice with a stiff wrist so that I can practice without being in pain. When I go to play, I put on as much pain reliever stuff as I can possibly slather on, and then and wear a brace if I'm going to play more than a couple songs, and take some pain pills, not some legal ones, and the anti-inflammatory ones, and basically the adrenaline gets you through the gig. But the big deal is right now is the practicing. So I've changed my technique already to a stiff-wristed, different grip. So I have to hold the pick differently, and it just sucks getting old. But I'm not, I'm not rolling over dead, but it gets to a point where I don't want to practice anymore. I am done.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to stand in front of people that have sacrificed their time or money or both and pretend like I'm a player that when I'm not practicing. So I've got a lot more tricks up my sleeve for what to do. And obviously I could go all legato and not, hardly use a pick, but I've tried that and I'm not liking the results so far. But since I play classical guitar too, I've got, the concept of using more finger style. And, finger style with the right hand gives you quite a bit of control. And what the downside is, I can't get that back and forth sound of a pick. So it may be I'll be into some kind of hybrid thing with a, thumb pick and fingers. I'm not sure which way it's going right now. Right now, I'm using the traditional grip, whereas I used to use 2 fingers and a thumb. And I'm using a traditional grip without moving my wrist at all to practice. Then when I play the gigs, I'm doing whatever, I revert back to the 2 fingers and a thumb and the stiff wrist technique. I switch between those sometimes in the middle of a solo or in the middle of a song. So anyway, when that stops working, and yeah, I'm done. I'll take a couple of years off and see what I can do as far as another technique.
But it's definitely osteoarthritis, though, because I interviewed a guy named Dave Biller out of Austin, Texas, and he had this thing. It's called focal dysphonia, and he's had to make a lot of adjustments in his playing. Like he basically had to start over, pretty much,
Yeah.
And yeah,
I've talked to some other players with that too. It's possible for a musician to get to a point where you can't do the gig anymore. But, it's also possible to adjust your gig. Somebody's having trouble doing something. Well, find a way to limit. Don't show the audience your problems. Show them your strengths,
Well, you're an incredibly resourceful guy. I'm like 100% confident that whatever you do is going to you'll get it figured out, man. You'll figure it.
It's just a matter of adjusting. Basically, it's like if you write a song in E and the vocalist wants to sing it in E flat and you can't tune down, you have to adjust. Your riff is going to sound different, but the song's still there. That's, the music's still good. You just got to change your fingering. Change your fingering, change the way the riff is laid out. You got to change things, but you'll make it work. But I think that's the point at which I know I'm toast. If I can't practice every day, and if I'm dreading practicing every day, then yeah, I'm done. Because I don't want to go up on stage and suck. I know a lot of the Richie Blackmore fans. It's all right. I left the door wide open there.
Man, I don't think you're ever going to go on stage and suck. I'm pretty confident about that.
Well, yeah, they're saying, yeah, that's what we've been doing for 25 years.
No, I don't think too many people are saying that, man. This is a tough question. Thank you for answering all that. I really appreciate it. I think it was a pretty popular question. And it was Brian Lucas and Zach Hillerson. Shout out to those guys who had some more specifics. Man, this is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
The fact that I thank God every single day that my little boy started breathing when he was born. I never fail to say that.
Wow, that's pretty, wasn't expecting that. Thank you. Has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Oh, yeah. But it's similar oddly enough. As a teenager, I imagined what if I choose to be a musician and go to music school? I was accepted to the University of Miami. I had excellent grades and good test scores and all that. So I could have been an electrical engineer, which fascinated me because I imagined that meant that I could design all these cool audio pedals and stuff for my guitar. In reality, it would have been a different thing in reality, I imagined. But anyway, when I imagined myself saying, well, I think maybe musician, I thought to myself, well, you know, probably by the time I get it done with school, what I like musically isn't going to be fashionable. And I'll probably have to work hard to make a living, but I'll probably be able to make a living. And it's exactly what happened. Exactly. There's been no huge breakthroughs or anything. When I did play with famous bands, you know, it was down the road when somebody else wasn't doing it. And I've had to work hard to do any of the gigs that I've done. So pretty much that wasn't a really surprise. But I wasn't that dismayed by it when I thought of it. The fact that, you know, the stuff that I like now is probably not going to be in fashion in the future. And again, pretty much that is what happened. You know, how many people do you see standing outside of disco clubs, you know, waiting to be let in or to pay to be let in? You know, how many of those would go see a gig where I was playing at? Zero.
Yeah, probably not many.
I'm very close to zero.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And that's where, you know, the music is different now. Music serves a different function. We have so many media areas to bombard each other with. Yeah, music is drastically different. But I think this thing still goes. If you really love it, then you could possibly be able to work hard enough every day of your life to do it for a living. But if you can't do that, it's really, really going to be a long shot.
Agreed. But again, I think it's like that in any kind of self-employment, pretty much.
Yes, exactly. Self-employed people know they work twice as long as people with salaries. Mm-hmm. They put in double the hours a week, and they take risks all the time of not getting any pay.
Absolutely.
But they have to do it because they really believe in it and love it.
Or yeah, like someone asked me today, "Why do you work for yourself?" And I said, "Man, I'm basically unemployable." You know, I just, you know, and I don't mean like I'm like some jerk that goes in there. Yeah, but I'm just not employable. I'm not really. It wouldn't work well in that system.
You actually would be very employable. It just may have a different title. May have a different title than you'd ever imagined.
Yeah, man.
I could see you would be like, for instance, just. I mean, I'm not thinking this through. Just off the top of my head, you could be a great guidance counselor. You know, for talking a kid through that's just about to give up and throw his life away.
Wow, that's really kind of you, but I actually could do that. Yeah, I've had a really difficult life, childhood especially, so I could definitely do that, and I would like to do that.
There you go.
If I had to do that situation, I'd love to be able to help out, something like that. Yeah, thanks, man. In the late '80s, you worked as a commercial pilot. What prompted you to do that? How did you have time to do that? And do you have any other hobbies or interests with all your free time?
Well, actually, I had quit the music business pretty much. It meant to me that I was going to record and write music. In fact, during that time, I finished recording the High Tension Wires album. That was one of my favorite things I've ever done. And partly because I just didn't care anymore. I just said, more than any other time, no one's going to buy this record. And record company's going to hate this record more than any other record I've ever done. But this is going to be real and real, it's going to be a representation of my imagination. And it turned out just about perfect. So that was the motivation was to get a job that would pay the bills so I could do whatever I wanted to work on without stressing so much. And what I found out is that in any business, there's going to be parts you don't like. And it's a little harder than anybody thinks to do well in any business, in any job. So it was a wonderful experience. Just, being the guy in a uniform, getting a job, just getting the job back in a time when there was more pilots than there were jobs was a great experience. Kind of working on the ratings and basically advancing my knowledge of flying and getting myself up for the tests and the selections and all that. And I really loved being an ordinary Joe with a uniform. I was just like, people would, I don't know, they sort of would give you respect. You're a pilot. Oh, you're flying this plane? Okay. Here's the weather. You want to take that out to the captain? Yeah, sure. As opposed to, normally when I had long hair my whole life, I was used to, if you went up to ask anybody something, they would kind of sneer at you, figuring this guy's a loser for some reason because he doesn't look like what I imagine somebody would look like that I would respect. I don't know. I just had this strange thing that all of a sudden people would just treat me normally with no expectations. When I had, wore a shirt and a tie and had short hair and everything, it was weird. I was people did treat me different. And I sort of wasn't prepared for that. But that was a cool thing just to see that, wow, people really do judge on appearances. So, remember that, Steve. I didn't remember that, by the way, after I quit being a pilot. So, and if anybody would see me today in my normal habitat, they would say, "What is that guy? Who does he think?" What?
Oh, dude, you look great, man. Yeah, you look.
But I'm just saying, like
when you go pump your gas or go to Walmart or wherever, or yeah, I'm picking up parts. Yeah, it's just like I look exactly like those guys that just got off work, tearing apart some air conditioner system. Right. Do you have any other hobbies? Not that you have any time for them.
It's just I'm a handyman. The farm. Take care of the farm. I was just delivering some hay this morning, and that's cool. It's the animals love it. They love to see me coming.
Yeah, I bet.
It's wonderful thing to take care of your fields, and I see a weed out there, I'm going to go get it, or I'm going to go cut it and top those things off, and I'm going to wait till their weather forecast looks good for this. Maybe I can take a chance that I could get enough drying time to cut some hay now. And then how am I going to bale it? Am I going to bale this tight, loose, or what's the humidity going to be? What's my storage? Am I going to have a space between them to get more airflow when I store them? And everything. You just think about I think about everything all the time. So I got a lot to do and a lot to occupy my mind. And when it's dark, then the music, I'm more of a vampire person anyway. It's when work on the music is at night.
Do you find that a blessing and a curse? Because I'm similar to that, where like my mind's like I feel good if I'm busy, and then but I have a hard time shutting down. And then when I do shut down, it's like going 100 miles an hour. All of a sudden, you go in zero, so it's like a collapse almost. So I can't like relax like I'd always say, man, I'd love to be able to just go out and wash my truck on a Saturday morning like a normal person, man. It never seems that. You know what I mean? Like, or like just watch a football game with one of my kids. Well, I will tomorrow because it's Thanksgiving, but normal shit. I don't do that. Do you ever struggle with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People say, if you're ever not doing something, give me a call. I said, that's never going to happen. And people say, when you're looking for something to do, I said, that's never going to happen. I've never looked for something to do.
Right.
I've always been busy. And I've never been bored either.
Yeah. I know.
Even when I'm stuck in a hotel room, it's like, well, I've got my recording stuff. I want to start working on some song ideas.
Yeah, I hear you on that, man. Hey, is there going to be a third Flying Colors record?
Yes. I don't know about touring, but record-wise, yeah, we're going to try to do this real soon.
Great. And I know the Dregs went out earlier this year. Is that going to happen again next year?
Well, we got together with Oski after 40 years. So I reckon every 40 years we'll get together.
I'll mark my calendar.
All right.
Man, two more questions. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time, man.
Sure.
Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been deliberate and how much has just been a part of aging?
I think it's similar to something I said earlier in the interviews, that I think I appreciate people and life more than ever. And part of that's from having step kids and my own son. And Shawnee, my stepdaughter's disabled from a brain hemorrhage, 2 brain hemorrhages actually. So she's heavily disabled, but she has a personality, and she can talk with some effort. And it's hard to, we do, like, her and I do speech therapy every day, where I keep telling her the same thing: slow down, close your words, take a big breath, try to make a sentence. And she and her friends that she goes to this kind of school with have really taught me more about, what it's like. Well, Shawnee has this unbelievable attitude on life, that she sees the positive in everything. So she's, in a big way, she's my mentor. And I learned stuff from my son about perseverance. And boy, when I'm on stage, I just remember thinking, how would Kevin handle this? He's so natural of a performer. It didn't come that easily to me when I was his age. But when there's like a heavy part or an angry part, I want to have that angst that he has. And then all of a sudden I can conjure it, all the stuff from being that age comes back to me. So I've learned a lot from my kids. So I guess just appreciating other people's lives more, and and telling my wife more often the positive things she's doing, and appreciating all the stuff that she has to do to sacrifice. So yes, it's deliberate, and yes, it's natural. It's just something that is absorbed from being a parent. You learn a lot from your kids. And in the process of raising them, you learn a lot. But yeah, life becomes more and more valuable the more time you spend with your kids.
Thank you, man. I want to end this on a nice little story I read about you, where you mentioned a quote about an experience you had, and you've alluded to this a couple of times in the interview. You said the quote that you said was, "It reminds me to never think that something is too much trouble." And I'd like maybe if you could tell the story behind that quote. It was about the Navajo lady and the Native American rug.
Oh, and I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really freaking cool, man. I just got goosebumps. That's awesome.
One of my friends asked me to do a benefit concert for them and told me the story. She was, well, like a lot of Native Americans, was relegated to some really barren land, relatively barren, for a lot of the reservations stuff is, was part of a gigantic area where they would, could have, places. This is a hunting area. This is a winter area. This is a summer area. But now it's just they're just stuck in one area. She figured out a way to raise sheep and make the wool into thread, and then weave and dye the thread in different colors with natural plant additives, and then sort it and weave these rugs. And at the end of this, and I wasn't expecting this, I should say first off, the benefit was to try to help them with a legal fund to keep the government from kicking them off their own property, because there was some kind of minerals found in the ground, and maybe they had, it's common in the West to own land that you don't have the mineral rights for.
Yeah,
and maybe that was some part of the treaty. I don't know. I didn't get too far deep into it, but anyway. I asked for nothing. I just wanted to do it. And at the end of this, she gave me this rug and told me that story about everything except the red dye had come from the land. And there's other colors there. It's a black and a gray and a brown and white. White, I imagine, was the natural sheep color. But anyway, yeah, she gave me that. I said, no, I can't take that. And after hearing that story, I insisted, said, it's not polite to turn it down. So, okay. Wow. So anyway, that's first thing that my feet touch when I wake up, and last thing before I go to sleep. It's something it's a sobering reminder of, like when I think of the stuff in my mind that I have thought is too much trouble, it makes me feel so inferior as a human being, to just to go in my mind. Some of the things I thought, oh man, that's too much of a pain in the butt to do. And then I just look down at that rug, and it's like, wow. There's, in any square inch, I can see so many tightly knit pieces of thread woven. It's mind blowing. And she did this with water that had to be trucked in on a pickup truck.
Wow.
To water the animals and to survive on, and just out in the middle of the high desert. So yeah, it's if she only knew how much she taught me. Another lesson in life, from an unexpected source.
Yeah, which is always like the best, man, because like you get something that you were totally unexpecting, and it's like a precious gift. And yeah, that's very cool. How long have you had that rug now?
I don't know, about 30 years.
Wow.
I'm not sure if 25 years.
Yeah.
I'm not too good with dates. I don't chronicle my life happening. I don't have as many pictures as I like, or I don't have any memoirs, but it's going by so fast. I don't spend a part of the day trying to remember things any more than I just naturally remember them. So I don't remember dates too well. It was when Steve Morse Band was touring a lot, and I think it was right before Purple. So that would have been 27 years. I don't know.
Man, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Your time.
You're great.
Thanks.
And thank you for adjusting your schedule to do this. Our plans changed drastically in the last 24 hours.
It's my pleasure. Honestly, it's my pleasure. I can't thank you enough for being so cool and so just sharing some really nice things, man. So thank you, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope you come down here sometime. And Purple. I saw Purple. I think it was. Man, I was trying to think earlier when you were talking if you were with the band then, but I think it was before that. It was probably in the late 80s or something.
I wasn't until 93, 94 is when it was technically in 93 we decided to do the tour, and 94 when we did.
Hey, I guess you're in.
He said, I reckon you're in.
I reckon you're in.
I remember that.
Thank you for everything, Steve. Hang on one second. We'll wrap up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support and help. Thank you very, very much to Steve Morse. It's been an honor and a privilege for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.